certainly this question about can we help and how do we know that our help will actually be effective is one of the big issues that gets in the way of people thinking that they do have an obligation to help. And when I speak about this topic publicly, it's probably the most common reaction I get is something that's a little bit cruder than what was said, but it's a kind of challenge which often says, well, what's the point of giving to these developing countries when we know that their politicians are all corrupt and they're just going to siphon off the money and use it to build bigger palaces or to have more private planes or to put in a Swiss bank account or something along those lines. And that's the crude statement, but there are people who are genuinely sceptical about the effectiveness of aid. There's been what you might call an aid critique, which has come from economists, three in particular, one called William Easterly at New York University, author of a book called The White Man's Burden, one by a woman called Dambisa Moyo, who is from, I'm not quite sure now which developing country, maybe it is Malawi actually, that she's from originally, but she has a Harvard PhD. It's a book called Dead Aid. And the most recent is not a whole book, but a chapter from our own Angus Deaton in economics here, which I've put on your reading list. It's quite a long chapter, but it's also a critique of the effectiveness of aid. Now, these critiques vary a little. Both Easterly and Moyo are really talking about government aid and multilateral institutions like the World Bank. And of course, government aid typically does go, or a lot of it goes to governments. It has in the past and still to some extent does. And if that's so, then you may have a problem with corrupt governments. The last Bush administration, George W. Bush's administration, did try to set up standards for good government and make aid to some countries anyway conditional on that. But a lot of government aid, and particularly a lot of US government aid, is not even really directed towards reducing global poverty. One of the problems with government aid is that it's got political targets as well, so that we give aid to countries that are significant to us and that we want to keep on our side. During the Cold War, we gave huge amounts of aid to the Congo, though we knew that its president, Joseph Mobutu, was highly corrupt, but he wasn't a communist. So that was enough reason to give him aid. More recently, of course, we've given aid to those countries that we've wanted to enlist or to help avoid being problems in the global fight against terrorism. So the largest amounts of US aid have gone to Iraq and Afghanistan. And we've given very substantial aid to Egypt to keep it on side in terms of the Middle East peace. So a lot of our aid is not really even directed to global poverty. But it may also be true that where it is directed to global poverty, it sometimes is not as effective as aid from NGOs. But it's that we should be looking at, because I think if we're considering what we ought to be doing as a matter of what's right for us to live an ethical life, we're not going to send money to the US Treasury and say, please use this for more government aid. We're going to send it to one of a number of non-government organisations in the aid field. And the question that we need to answer, therefore, is, so what are the effective organisations that are going to make the best use of that money?